files called resx files. And this is showing an example of some of the old naming
Okay.
right now. And what it's going to do very quickly is show you a few variations of how it's embedded and how I just placed the script right at the root of the folders. And the script is built to be Git repo aware. So if there's a Git ignore, it's actually going to not try and replace anything in Git ignored files. Um, but effectively, that ran the script, and this is showing the code diff of exactly what it did. And you can see here, it wasn't just a simple Azure AD gets replaced.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the 425 Show. I'm Mark Morsinski, and I'm going to be your host today. If this is your first time checking out the show, we have all of our previous shows are up on our YouTube channel. So it includes things like how Windows Hello for Business, Cloud Kerberos Trust works. We just published a show this week around some of the lifecycle workflows and governance types of things. So lots of good stuff there. And we also have a LinkedIn page. Feel free to follow us on that as well. We try to post things, little tips and tricks throughout the week and stuff like that. So today's topic is going to be around the Microsoft Entra ID rename resources. So I have two guests here to talk to me about this. I have Nicole and David. So Nicole, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Big fan of the show. Thanks for having us on, Mark. So I'm Nicole Peterson, and I'm Senior Product Marketing Manager for Microsoft Entra.
Awesome. And David?
Yeah, thanks for having us on again. It's a great opportunity to be here. So I am a software engineer who works on Microsoft Entra in various capacities, and I'm going to be talking about something fun today.
Awesome. So yes. So for those that did not see the news, we're talking about something very dear to a lot of people's hearts, which was the renaming of Microsoft Azure AD to Microsoft Entra ID. I know for me personally, I just did a presentation a few weeks ago, and the words Azure AD is like deep into the bones of like you just naturally say it. So saying Entra ID is still something where I'm still working to do that. But one of the feedbacks we heard from the community was help with renaming their own documentation and scripts and stuff like that. So I think we have some slides to kind of talk about just to kind of level set in terms of like what the rename is, or if you happen to miss it or something like that. And then I think we're going to get into some of those resources. Does that sound right, Nicole?
That's great.
Got it. Awesome. Okay. So, so let's I'll kick it over to you. Let you start kind of maybe talking about the rebrand and the rename and what kind of changed where, just quickly through that. And then we'll start getting into some of the actual resources for people.
Absolutely. So most people have heard about the rename to Microsoft Entra ID by now, but a little background. Across the last couple of years, the Microsoft portfolio for security has been really amplifying and consolidating against 6 different product groups to really cover security, compliance, as well as identity and management. So while Microsoft Intune is our endpoint management area, obviously with devices, Microsoft Entra is the family name for all of the identity and network access products. So all of the different products in Microsoft Security have consolidated under family names, Microsoft Entra being no exception. So under taking that name, Microsoft Entra, and I'll also just prop to, it's pronounced Entra, like the color magenta, or
well, that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, I've had a couple customers ask me. I call it Entra, but that's what I heard.
Nissan Sentra. That's another one that I like to use to help people to remember. The
magenta one's a good one. I think that one will roll off the
tongue. Magenta is a little bit more universal than the Nissan Sentra. That might have just been my dad's car in the 80s. But so when we were looking at, we really thought long and hard, obviously, about changing the name away from Azure AD. It's, a lot of people know that name. We've been using it. We talk about AD as shorthand. And Man, it's a lot to change the name. We understand that. However, there were really, really strong reasons why that name needed to change. First of all, a lot of people were still thinking that Azure AD was all they needed for identity and access management. And that, man, in today's world, like the traditional IAM is not enough. We've been building up our product stack at Microsoft for identity with governance, with a new SIAM feature that we have in preview, external ID for customer and identity and access management. A lot of the, I'll just say a lot of the stuff you're covering here on the show, Mark, like you can all see, like, you know, this ain't your grandma's Azure AD anymore. There's much more that we have for you. So, and also, I know you know this too, Mark, that Azure Active Directory really wasn't an accurate name for that product either.
Yeah. Let me ask you to kill your team. Come here in the chat in the back, and I'll tell you what one of my customers told me while you're doing that. One of my customers actually said, you know, at first he had a hard time with the actual rename of it because he's like, you know, he's used to just saying Azure AD for everything, and all their documentation calls it Azure AD. But he said, you know, it makes sense because Azure AD is not really Active Directory, and it is not just for Azure. So the name Azure AD, though everyone, you know, kind of got used to it and loved it, doesn't really properly describe like what is all encompassed in there. So he kind of like, at first he was kind of against it, but then he kind of really came around to it. So I think we're starting to see people kind of come to that same conclusion that you kind of said there.
Yeah, I'm starting to see some of that support in the chat as well. It takes some time to get used to it.
Yeah.
Like as you were saying before, and I actually have a jar on my desk that I'm giving to charity this month of October during our Microsoft Giving campaign, that every time I slip, I put money in a jar. So a bunch of us are doing that, you know, donating to charity based on how many times we slip. So
got it. Okay.
Yeah, of course. But it's also just about really simplifying all of the naming and licensing across that entire family to make it easier. So like all you have to remember is like Microsoft Entra is really, you know, your go-to for identity and network access solutions end to end.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what's a little bit in there? I know sometimes, so myself and Nick and Bailey and Jeff and some other people, we do a lot of Entra permissions management stuff. And I think people sometimes think that when we talk about that, that's what we're talking about and not just like everything that's in Entra. I know this was covered in the blog post and things like that, but I think this kind of helps people visualize. This is exactly what I was thinking of. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Flip to that slide. Okay, on the left column is more of your core identity and access management solutions and tools. So Microsoft Entra ID, formerly known as Azure AD. Pretty sure we all know what that is, although there's innovations and, you know, new features being added to that all the time. Second in that category of your most core features and really came out of Microsoft Entra ID, see, I almost did it, is Microsoft ID governance. So taking the governance features, many of them are still within P2, Microsoft Entra ID P2, formerly known as Azure AD P2, and expanding those so that you can have a full end-to-end governance solution to make sure that people are complying with, you know, regulatory requirements, et cetera.
Yeah, we have a bunch of videos on that already. We just posted one actually last night on lifecycle workflows, a deep dive. So there's a bunch of stuff on the channel for that. But awesome. And also, I'm waiting for you to accidentally say Azure AD because I know I'm going to, and I will feel a lot better if you do it first. So, like, don't feel bad. Just say I'm definitely gonna mess it up. So
fair enough. I mentioned Entra External ID before, which is our new SIAM solution that's in preview, Customer Identity and Access Management. And then over in the new identity categories, you've talked about some of these before on your show as well. So verified ID, the decentralized identity solution for more privacy respecting credentials that are really more owned by the person instead of owned by your organization, being able to take those with you wherever you go. Permissions management across AWS, Google, Azure Cloud, making sure that the risks are visible across that multi-cloud infrastructure for permissions. Workload ID. So identities are not just humans, they're also code, they're also workloads, they're running automated in the background. You kind of set and forget, but yikes, if those get compromised, that's going to be some big trouble if you're not even seeing them. So workload ID gives visibility to those workloads, as well as being able to help you then manage whatever risks, whatever's going on, know what workloads you have to be able to think about the security for those as identities. And then, of course, network access, our big announcement this summer, that we now have sort of a full zero trust framework of solutions for you. So Microsoft Entra Internet Access, making sure you can secure access, network access to all internet, SaaS, M365 apps, and then private access, so our ZTNA solution for getting to private apps and on-prem as well. So yeah, we've really grown from having just one product to now we've got a whole family of 8. Several of these are in private preview right now and preview, but we're really growing to meet the needs of all of our customers.
Yep. So we did a show a month ago on Entra Internet and Private Access, and then Javon wanted to re-record the video, and he told me that he would give it to me in a few days, and I still don't have it, but he promised me we have it by this Friday, so we'll get that up probably next week. And then we actually did one about a week ago on verified ID, so that one will be up here on the channel as soon as somebody can edit it. So it looks like we have a question. What is the penalty for the first one to call it Azure AD?
Ooh, challenge, Mark.
I don't know. I think we'll have to donate to whatever charity that you want us to do, Nicole. I'll match you whatever you do. How about that?
That would be amazing. Let's do it. Let's make it big. Let's go $50 donation. Mark, I'm going to challenge you. $50 donation to the Trevor Foundation, supporting LGBTQ kids and helping to prevent suicide in that population.
Sounds good. Happy to do it. Happy to
awesome.
do whoever does it. Okay. So there's another question that came up, I think, about the license restructuring that came with this. And I think that's a good topic. That was from Antonio there. So do we have a slide on that? And then I think we're going to get into some of the resources, right? I know this is not going to be a rehash of that blog post, but we'll.
So the licenses, let me head to this other slide. So there's what was in these licenses before is still in them now. So what you had in Azure AD free, I can say that name because it's on the slide and I need to explain it. Azure AD free became Microsoft Entra ID free. And we actually didn't change the licenses at all. We worked really hard. It's the same SKU IDs, the same licenses. The features that were in P1 before are still in P1. P2 is still P2. Identity governance, ID governance, we did add some functionality to that SKU there, but the ID governance, the governance features that were in Microsoft Entra ID are still there. So there's actually not, we worked really hard. The service plans are still the same. They're still available in M365 like they were before. And we also changed the name of the SKUs and licenses for external identities to be Microsoft Entra as well, pulling those over from that former name.
Yeah, so there really shouldn't be a big change, right? It's just the name that's being changed to be better aligned, right? So the licensing should all be the same.
Yeah, that's right. And it's the licensing is the same, the terms are the same, the features are the same, the functionality is the same. We worked really hard to make sure it's just the name that changed. And the way that we changed the name, and for those of you who are listening to find out some tips and resources for if you'd like to change the name in your own content, it's a little different. It's not just a find and replace, okay? Because the name Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, changed to Microsoft Entra ID. That's the product name. But we've really been working on our vision across identity and network access is that the features underneath are unified, right? So conditional access, that's not just a feature of the identity and access management anymore. Conditional access now also covers your ZTNA, your internet access, and your private access. So we're thinking about how can we really be providing that like comprehensive coverage across. And it's a lot easier than saying, gosh, let me think if I had a feature in, ID governance. If we called that Microsoft Entra ID governance lifecycle workflows, whew. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm the
that's a mouthful.
marketer. I'd never say it. So Microsoft Entra lifecycle workflows. If you need to use, the product name at all, of course, you could just say lifecycle workflows.
Yeah.
But so instead of talking about just being joined to, that particular tenant or to your registration or connect, just say Microsoft Entra. So it works really well in, language, common language. It's just Microsoft Entra. It's a feature of Microsoft Entra. But part of the reason we're releasing these resources today is because, of course, that means you can't just find and replace in all of your text. But these are kind of the guidelines, the high level. And then we also have a, new icon that really communicates this is, way beyond just, the old Azure AD. So it's no longer a hierarchy, which is what that pyramid meant to represent, but it's more inclusive of the changing world of building more of a trust fabric, as we call it, connections to everyone.
Yeah. No, this is super helpful. Sometimes I see that come up in like Discords and stuff. Should they call it Azure AD join still or hybrid Azure AD join? So I think this is a really helpful thing.
Yeah, and I'll show you. We've actually got a whole glossary. I'll show you in a minute.
Oh, awesome. Let's get to that. And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the different chats. I know we have Jeff and Bailey and some folks there trying to answer those questions. And if there's anything else, we'll pull it up here and we can talk about it. So feel free to put this in there. Okay. So I think this is kind of like the last one of like the timeline. Then we're going to get into some of the resources for people, because that was one of the big things of feedback we got right on that blog post.
Yeah, absolutely. So timeline, just to let you know how this name change is rolling out across Microsoft. It's actually happening right now. We announced it July 11th. And for 30 days, actually beyond that, we're still really blanketing our docs, the message center, your tenant overview page, all of the pages on Microsoft.com with notes to make sure that everyone is aware that Azure AD is now Microsoft Entra ID. On August 15th, we started rolling out changes across our websites, product experiences, all the surfaces that Microsoft creates and manages. So you'll see that now in your tenant, in Microsoft Entra, in Azure Portal, everywhere. You're starting to see that Microsoft Entra ID name. We wanted to make sure that this was as contained as possible, because we're all in that space right now, a little bit awkward, where you're using both names at the same time across different places. So right now it's both, right? And we wanted to make sure that while, I'm the first to admit the word Azure AD will exist on the internet, probably forever. That's okay in some corners, but we wanted to, for the majority of the public facing experiences, get it done within this 4-month window. So all that's changing so that by the time of Microsoft Ignite, we'll be able to say, yep, it's now Microsoft Entra ID everywhere.
Yep. And I know there's still the rename still happening across, like, that's just the web stuff. There's still stuff like changes, I'm guessing, to Windows and other Microsoft products where this is in there, right? So it's going to take quite a time to get that done.
Yeah, we've got a commitment across Microsoft to get it done by the end of the year, with the exception of there's certain parts of Windows that their deployment cycles are yearly. So it's going to wait. We're saying, hey, don't interrupt. And this, this is true as well as if you're doing it with your own teams. Like, just go by your normal deployment cycles and just know this is a great time to put it in. And also for any of the on-prem services, like our Active Directory services that are mentioning connections to Microsoft ID, those are, longer rolling cycles with our customers. So it's all right. It'll change in time, but we wanted the big wave of changes to be happening by November.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. So one of the feedbacks we got, I think, in that blog post was, I think, some of the pain that customers and partners feel with this, because they have to go update, their stuff and what resources did they use for this. And I think we kind of covered some of that glossary stuff there. Like, what do I call this now? Because, they have their own services that they've built on top of our stuff. So, I think this is, you want to talk about like kind of how you guys took that feedback and what we did about it?
Yeah. super grateful for all of the passionate feedback that really helped us to understand even more about what was needed from our customers, from our partners, and how to make the name change easier for you guys. And one of the most common things we ask for is, can you help us make this automated? So actually that's part of what we're launching today. Here is the first time talking about it, is here on the 425 show. So we are launching today a PowerShell script that we'll tell you about in a minute to help make that name change automated. So yeah, that script is something that we started using internally. So we're getting that out to you now.
Awesome.
And what we've been doing overall, and we've been rolling this out for the past couple of months, but now with the scripts, we sort of feel like the resources are pretty good for you. So I'm looking forward to having everyone test them out and continue to give us the feedback to help us improve. So I'll walk you through. There are two main pieces of public content that we've been working really hard across our teams on Microsoft Learn to get this information out to you. So the two links are there on the screen, and we'll put them in the chat as well.
Yep.
So first of all, on Microsoft Learn, we have an article called New Name for Azure Active Directory, and it is exactly what it sounds like it should be. All the things that I was telling you before with the details about no interruptions to usage or service, for example, you can see all the details in there about what is changing and what is not. So we have the details on the product name within this article, the logo and icon. There's a link if you need that new product icon. We've actually made it downloadable from Docs.
Okay. Yeah, I know people have their slides that they want to update with that and make sure that's accurate. That's super helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So yep, we've just decided to make those public. We also have them going through here, the list of what names aren't changing. So we're changing all of the Azure AD names except for Azure AD B2C, which is on this list. That's not being renamed. Everything else, it's more like the list of names that people often get confused and they think they are part of Azure Active Directory.
Yeah.
Active Directory is not, it's not the same. It's not the same product.
Not at all. But no, this is super helpful. This is also another question I see come up with the community of which ones are not being renamed and things like this. So this is super helpful. And I think having this in a docs format also gives a lot of help for the community, because they go tell their leadership or management, this is what I'm hearing, or this is what I saw in this blog post, and they might not say, oh, that's just some blog. Like, it needs to be in docs for it to be like official. So this is super helpful for that.
Yeah, we even internally at Microsoft, when people are asking, hey, what are the exceptions? What's the glossary? What are all the changes? We send them to this public article. Like, we are also using it as our same resource when we are changing the code at Microsoft. So yeah, auth library, Microsoft Graph, those are all still the same.
Yeah.
PowerShell continues, our security platforms. We also have in here the list of frequently asked questions. So yeah, if someone's asking you more about why it's being changed, is it still in M365, any of those common questions around what's changing, are things being renamed, are they not?
Yeah.
And then towards the very last section of this article is that glossary of terminology that we were talking about before. So we actually built a glossary with all the old terminology compared to what it's called today. So we have the product names in there. Oh, sorry. We went to the how-to page. Sorry, I flipped quickly. So this has an entire glossary. It's very long, of all of the feature names of Azure AD, now Microsoft Entra ID, and then how to change them. So now we've taken this glossary and also put it in the script, which I'll show you in a minute.
Awesome. Yeah, this is all super helpful stuff, and I think we're still, like, if people have questions, they can put it in the comments of the docs, and our docs team is actively triaging them, right, and kind of going through and making changes and stuff like that.
We totally are. We actually released this script about 2 days ago. Already got feedback about one more point that needed to be added.
Okay.
changed the script that was in there and updated it. So yeah, we're actively listening. So please, like, pound away on this. Let us know. We're human beings here looking at it and ready to change and respond to your comments.
Sure. So I think, David, are you still around to come do this demo of this really awesome stuff
Yeah,
that you helped make?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So
So,
David,
so
go ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead, Nicole.
Oh yeah. Let me just walk through this how-to article. Sort of sets up how to get into, the point where you can use the script, because really we found around Microsoft and in working with customers and partners, the first step is to really just assess how much work there is to do, because it can feel a little mind-blowing, like changing.
Yeah.
Our team were like, okay, so how do we change the name to Microsoft Entra ID all over the world on everything, right? It's kind of mind-blowing. Take it by chunks. Like, all right, with the website, let's find what is, we made an Excel spreadsheet of here are all of the URLs of all the pages across all of Microsoft.com we need to change, right?
Yeah.
And then we went through, and with our videos, any of our content, and then we went through and also decided to prioritize those. Some of those we realized, oh wow, this content's old, it's lingering out there. Traffic says nobody's even using it. So it's kind of has been a good time for us to clean house a bit as
Yeah.
well.
No, I mean, those large projects like that, just try to get focusing on a couple of key things first to kind of move them along.
Yeah,
And then keep making that small progress. I mean, that's like anything else we talk about in the show, of just like, it's
right.
really hard to go from 0 to 100 on anything, right? So, 20% better is better than 0%, 40% is better than 20%. You just kind of keep working your way through as you go through that. So,
Yeah,
awesome.
like start on your biggest public facing surfaces. The other thing we did to save time and energy, all of the behind the scenes, the code, the internal sites, like none of those have changed. It might be like years or never, right? And that's okay, right? We just were
Yeah.
like, what are the biggest places people are using? Let's change those first. The other thing we did on stuff that takes a little bit longer to change, videos, graphics, or like old blogs, right? We said, you know what, let's not go through the tediousness of changing all of those. Instead, let's just put a little tag on them that says, a little note, Azure AD is now Microsoft Entra ID. So like if you look on some of the older YouTube videos about Azure AD, we've just added that. So it doesn't need to change now. You can add it to your video, et cetera, if you have old content that's still popular. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's just the
I
stuff.
saw that with one of the latest CBA videos that Keith Brewer did about some of the new CBA stuff. And they had that in the beginning, like, hey, we recorded this before the rename. And this is kind of called
Yep.
it out for you.
Yep. So that's great. And then, we've got some real basics about how you can update the name. We did put in some, common human language if then statements about how you can be smart about looking for whether it's a noun, the product name,
Mm.
or whether it's modifying a feature name. So that's a little bit of if you wanted to create by hand something to be even smarter, we talked about what are some of the rules behind it for grammar, actually. And then when you're ready to, after you've assessed it, you know what you're going to change, you can go through and use the code, automate the graphics and icons. But our big announcement today is the sample PowerShell script. So
Awesome.
yeah, we're really lucky that David was building this internally so that we could use it at Microsoft. Like,
Yeah.
thanks for being, wanting to get your job done faster, David, because now we can share that with everyone.
Yeah, so I was originally tasked with updating a code base that has 500,000 lines or so.
Okay.
And I looked at that and I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. There's no way that I want to do that. So how can we do this faster? How can we do this simpler and smarter?
Yep.
So from that guidance that's in the learn.microsoft.com, I took the examples and embedded them in a PowerShell script and said, all right, let's just do a string replace, see what happens.
Okay.
And then iterated on that and got feedback from other stakeholders internally, and they added their examples to it. And we came out with essentially a quick script that will get the job done uh, and save you, I want to say, at least 90% of my time, at least, um, doing the replacement. Now, I still think it's something that can be built upon. If you want to change anything about it, that's why we're putting it out there. We're giving it to you as a basis for you to extend and make it meet your needs. But what we have right here is an example of how to run the script. And if we could hit play. So this is just a demo project, and internally we use a lot of C sharp. So we have translated files called resx files, and this is showing an example of some of the old naming
Okay.
right now. And what it's going to do very quickly is show you a few variations of how it's embedded and how I just placed the script right at the root of the folders. And the script is built to be Git repo aware. So if there's a Git ignore, it's actually going to not try and replace anything in Git ignored files. Um, but effectively, that ran the script, and this is showing the code diff of exactly what it did. And you can see here, it wasn't just a simple Azure AD gets replaced.
Yeah, you didn't
It
just use like a grep or like a control F, whatever. You actually did a little more nuance there, huh?
Yeah, and so it gets things like Microsoft Entra tenant correct, rather than a blind replace would have said Microsoft Entra ID tenant, which is not what we
Mm.
want the name to be. Yeah.
Okay. So this script's available on it's part of that doc, right? And it's also on
Hmm.
the GitHub.
Yep. And if people find issues with it, absolutely come in, contribute, make it better for everyone. This is a journey we are doing together.
Gotcha. Awesome. So that's good to know. So this is what we use internally, and we're making it available for everybody to update their own repros and docs and everything like that. So that's really cool. Um, okay, I think that's kind of all we had. I mean, Nicole, or did you have anything else you want to talk about from the rename perspective, or any of the resources, or what's coming next, or anything like that? Or
No, just
we can wrap
open
it
for
up.
if there's any more questions, but I think that's the gist of it. We're really looking forward to people getting their hands on that script and making their work a little bit easier.
Gotcha. So it's a question here from Antonio about, are we renaming the libraries? I'm not sure if that is in our docs at all on the what's being renamed and what's not. So this is, I'm guessing, like, Antonio, I'm guessing you're asking about MSAL libraries probably, and not 8L, since you should be off of that by now. But of any of our libraries, I saw, like, I know Graph is not being renamed, so I'm guessing it's probably in that same bucket. But I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Nicole.
Yeah, so the authentication libraries are not being renamed. Keep on using as you're using. And also within a lot of, so the older authentication libraries, when it was Azure AD Authentication Library, those had the Azure AD name all over. Less so now with Microsoft Authentication Libraries, and same for PowerShell as well. Like as we're moving forward to Microsoft Graph PowerShell, there's less and less of the actual names being used. Azure AD PowerShell, yep, that name was all over it.
Yep. Yeah, we did a session on earlier this year about how to get off of 8L to MSAL. So if you're still in 8L, you are already kind of in a bad spot. You should be looking to move to a supported language, or supported library, I should say, which is the MSAL library. So, okay, so I think that's kind of it for today. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been super helpful. I'm glad to see that we have this PowerShell stuff available to us, and some of these other resources available, like the glossary and things like that. So just a reminder for everybody, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. We're continuing to post new things. I see Jeff and Bailey and some other folks are in there today answering some of the questions. And then we also will publish this on our YouTube channel. So we'll get that edited hopefully in the next couple of days and get that up there. So with that, thank you so much for joining, and we'll be back next week. Actually, the lovely Grace and Jorge are going to be doing their monthly What's New in Microsoft Entra ID. I'll just say Azure AD, so that way I can make the donation there for Nicole's thing. So I did that there. But October, Halloween themed. Maybe they'll be in costumes. It'll be spooky, scary. So hopefully that'll be something pretty cool. But thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you all next week.